Hello, everyone. My name's Dan Ross. This is my 11th Dreamforce, and a quick show of hands if you were at Dreamforce in 2006. Not many. So let me paint a picture for you. A passionate wave in the back, thank you. Let me paint a picture for you. Very different than what you're going to experience this week. I think we had just topped 4,000 attendees for the first time, and the analysts were all over us. It can't get any bigger. This is too big. That's where we need to cap it. Power of the platform really catching a lot of attention. We had just announced our 50th App Exchange app. Mostly were built, they were just kind of free dashboards that we had placed up there. I think we might have had 300 million in revenue and almost 1,000 employees. So very different than what we're experiencing today and what we're going to experience this week. One thing that didn't change is at the time, it's funny to look back and think, but at the time it felt overwhelming. It felt like technology was going through this transformation. It was coming at us with more velocity and more complexity than we had ever seen before. And a little bit embarrassing, I'm going to show you a picture taken of me my first month on the job in February 2006. So that's me there, trying to get through all of the training that was being thrown at me. I came from a different industry, I came from a different role, selling to a very different size of customer. There was a lot to learn. And even though we only had a short list of products that we sold at the time, it felt very overwhelming, very confusing and stressful. And I think that's the impact that hasn't really gone away. I'm sure we can all agree that the complexity in technology, the pace of innovation, it's only getting faster and faster. And the impact of this on your employees can be stress, can be confusion, can be frustration, and that's without even going into how that impacts them in their personal lives when they go home from work. And the reason that that happens is, regardless of your role within your organization, you're getting pulled in a lot of different directions. Like the days of being able to say, that's not my job, that's gone. And whether you're running a business and being pulled in some of these directions that you see in front of you now, or you're an individual contributor who's trying to learn several different products, going through the different training, building some of your own pipeline, trying to progress your sales stages, you get pulled in a lot of different directions. And it's kind of funny, there's a bit of an anniversary for me, because 5 years ago, as of this Dreamforce, I would say is when I hit a peak of confusion and stress. And what was happening, I was new to leading a sales team. I had a team that was incredibly driven, incredibly talented. They've all gone on to do great things with their career. But while the list of things on their plate might have been a little bit different, the sense that they were giving me over and over and over is that we're very confused and overwhelmed by what we need to do to be successful in the job. They were talented and hardworking, but we weren't seeing the results. That was really weighing on me. And it was at a Dreamforce 5 years ago that something started to click. I had what I call my Jerry Maguire moment. So for those of you who've seen the movie, there's a scene where I think he's traveling for business, and he's in his hotel room, he gets out of bed, and he's sort of pacing back and forth. I think he's firing off push-ups, and he starts jotting on his, I don't know, it might have been a typewriter back then. He's jotting on his laptop, and something clicks, and he starts to conceptualize a different way of looking at the business, a different way to value the customer experience, a different way of treating people. And he just finds a certain clarity and organization as he's writing what he calls his mission statement. And it sounds cliche, but I was literally pacing back and forth in my hotel room and kind of sketching a few things out of my iPad. And it might have been, I don't know, 2, 3 a.m. Before I emailed my boss at the time, my VP, a person by the name of Mike Wolf. And subject to the email, Mike, great news, you don't have to fire me. And I asked him to meet me at the Starbucks, I think it was Howard and 3rd, 2 hours before the next keynote. And he meets me at 7 a.m. and he's like, all right, Dan, what's going on here? I'm like, okay, I've got a new plan. I like the way things are going to shape up going forward. It's as simple as the 7 summits. Bit of a blank face. He doesn't know how to react. It's good news that he doesn't have to fire his friend Dan, but he doesn't understand what I mean by the 7 summits. So I explained to him what the 7 summits are. It means that you've reached the peak of the tallest mountain in every continent. Quick glance at this map probably explains just how elite this badge of honor is. I mean, not too many people on Earth have ever done this or ever will because of what's involved. All of them are in completely different climates, different weather conditions, different amount of training and resources and tools that are required for all of them. And not everyone has the time or the budget or the commitment or the persistence or the endurance to stick with it until they have all 7. And the interesting thing is, when you ask someone in the climbing community, what's the most important summit, right? At the time, remember, I'm trying to solve for focus in my team because they're saying things like, if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So as a climber, which is the most important? And it's a trick question because it's not the tallest, it's not the hardest, it's not the first one that kind of gets you going. It's a trick question because there is no most important. You either have all 7 or you do not have this badge of honor. And even though when you isolate it to any one of these, there's a 1,000-point checklist of months and years of preparation to get to any one of these summits. It's an interesting way to just simply say, do these 7 things and you have this badge of honor. So I started thinking about my business and what are the most important things, and it helped me take, of the million quote-unquote mandatory things we needed to be good at, it helped me step back and say, we just need to do these 7 things. I started putting things in a common language with different categories and helped me put it in buckets that was a lot less confusing to me or my team, and helped us absorb it, helped us work together a lot more productively. So what I want to cover today in the next 15 minutes is what framework we put around our business, because it kind of came in a 2-pronged approach. The first thing I did was made an extensive list and split it into 2 categories. If everything needs to be done, what do I know how to teach and what do I not know how to teach? If I don't know how to teach it, I just need to hire for it. They need that when they walk in the door because I'm not going to be able to help them once they start. These are the deal breakers in our hiring process. Once we have the right people on the bus, now for the remaining 7 things, I know how to teach this. Even if they don't have that experience at all, I know that we can work with them. We've had some of our most successful account executives never sold before they started at Salesforce. And it's because they had the intangibles, they had the deal breakers that we don't know how to teach when they came in the door. So let's start with curiosity. I think we heard from both Colleen and Tim on how the most curious people, they're the ones asking all those extra questions. They're the ones that really start to understand their customer. They ask the additional questions, they get to that deeper understanding. They tend to learn and do things before they're told or taught to do it. Their curiosity, they can't help but do that. And that's what helps us get a step further. With integrity, certainly not something you want to spend a lot of time trying to teach. This is something that needs to come in through the door. Our management team talks a lot about the difference between getting it done and doing it right. Yes, you need to hit your number, but we want to see you do it the right way. We want people who can do it both. And I would so much rather someone miss their number and do right by the customer than hit it the wrong way. So integrity is an absolute deal breaker. Drive, Tim, I think, summarized this really well. Like, who are the people that are going to volunteer to go above and beyond their sales responsibilities? Those are the people that are going to go above and beyond the call of duty. They're going to help you innovate faster. They're going to help you improve more. They're going to help improve the company, not just their territory. And the drive, I mean, there are endless amounts of career opportunities, titles that don't exist yet, and I like their odds. The people with that kind of drive are the ones that are going to be in the best position to move their career in that direction. Problem solving is a mandatory one because of the complexity that we have in literally any industry right now. And what's happening is, for any of you who are in sales training, I'm sure you can agree, it is an endless task to create the amount of training and onboarding and documentation, because there's literally infinite number of situations and challenges that you want to prepare your team for. And there's too many variables involved to have defined prescriptive training for everything. So what you want is the people who have that problem-solving mentality that find it refreshing and energizing to face those challenges. They're good at isolating what's the challenge that we're solving for, and what is the best way that I can help solve that for my customer. That kind of leads naturally into resiliency. I think I'm not going to surprise anyone in the room when I say there's ups and downs to sales. You deal with a lot of rejection. You can have twice as good of a product as any of your competitors with 10 times the return on investment, and yet your customers still might go in a different direction despite your best efforts. There's just things that are beyond your control, and it's the people with that resiliency, they bounce back the fastest. They're the ones that pick themselves up, they learn from the experience, and they grow with it. That's a lot easier if they have the self-awareness to do that. I think, especially as we see CRM helping us have a more of a metrics-driven culture to watch our performance, The sales reps who, as soon as they take a dip, as soon as they have that tough month, that tough quarter, they look at the numbers and they say, this is not working out, I need to change the game. But you want to be really careful on what you're changing, right? The self-aware reps are the ones that do not abandon their best habits. They're self-aware enough to know that maybe the results haven't hit yet, but I'm not going to break what I know is working. I have the awareness to continue that despite the results not paying off yet. Another scenario that's really good to keep in mind as you're looking to hire for the most self-aware reps, I like to paint the picture to a candidate to help give them permission to be vulnerable in an interview. Right? If you ask in an interview, you want to know that they have the self-awareness on what's working and what's not, and you ask that, what's some of your greatest challenges, or what are you looking to get better at? That always sounds like a trick question in the interview. And you hear answers like, well, some people say I try too hard, or I can be a bit of a perfectionist. Like that's not what you're trying to get to. What you want to do is give them the ability to be vulnerable and be self-aware. And the best way that I find to do that is paint the picture of two separate one-on-ones. There's the self-aware account executive and the one who's lacking self-awareness. The one who's lacking self-awareness comes in and says to their manager, I'm having a really tough quarter, what should I do? And we have a culture of coaching, we're fine with that, that's the starting point of the conversation, so be it, let's try and work through it together and see how we can drive better results. But then imagine the other account executive who is self-aware and says, Dan, I'm having a really tough quarter, I've tried this, here's what I think's working, here's where I need your help. We've got all the time in the world for that kind of self-awareness. They're being vulnerable, but they've helped skip all the triage and they're going straight to the prescription. And that is so powerful because that's the type of self-awareness that they will always get more out of any mentor, any coach, any leader that they work with. We find that very inspiring to work with. And the last is emotional awareness. Emotional awareness, a real buzzword. You see it in every article now. The emotional awareness is really key for a few different reasons. Whether you sell on the phone or you sell in person, in person, we're seeing more and more of a consensus purchase, and it's getting harder to read the emotions in the room. You don't always hear the objections that your customers are going to talk about when you leave the room. And so you need to be able to read the body language, read the facial expressions in the room, understand who has maybe emotionally invested in the product that you're trying to replace, who has an emotional connection with your competitor. That's just surface level. Now, take yourself out of the room, get on the phone call, and any study is going to tell you, I think at least 70, 80% of communication is all through facial expressions, body language. What happens when you're on the phone? You can't see that. All you have is your tone of voice and trying to listen to those little clues. And we find that the emotional awareness people, the ones who do this best, they've got the natural knack to know when to have a stronger point of view and when to back off and use their listening skills. Now, when I wrote the quotable article on 7 skills that can't be taught, it was a really interesting reaction. I get maybe 1 or 2 emails or LinkedIn messages per week that give me really personal and specific examples of how someone has successfully taught this over and over. And the point of today is not to tell those people that they're wrong. I don't know, maybe it's like a bit of marketing in me that I didn't want to change the title of this to 7 things that may or may not be taught. I just haven't figured out how. It's not as catchy. But I think the point of what you want to do is just have your own self-awareness and figure out what is critically important to your business that you don't know how to teach, because that should drive your hiring model for your sales reps. This gets a little bit easier. Now we get into the stuff that we do know how to teach. And some of it might seem a little bit obvious at first, but it really, the impact is really compounded as we got more consistent with this in using this common language. Now that self-aware rep is coming in and listing these same categories to help me triage where they want help from us. And the first one is pipe generation. No matter how strong your marketing engine is, no matter what kind of word of mouth is going on with your product or your service that you're selling, no matter what ratio of partner versus provider mechanism you have built in with your lead gen, I've never heard a company say they have too much pipeline. And so what you want is to be able to hire the people that are not going to be dependent on it. Maybe they're going to have great lead flow when they come into the job, but you want to hire the people that know how to go out and get it themselves. Maybe it's as simple as just calling existing customers and trying to find different ways that they can help. Maybe it's going back to the people that said no in the past, maybe, and if they said no, perhaps we had the wrong pitch, the wrong person, the wrong product, trying to go back and regenerate some energy in those conversations, or going completely greenfield and expanding the awareness of your product. Time management is another one that I hear confused quite a bit. I think the bad advice that I hear given often to a sales rep is manage your time to be 100% revenue driven. And that's a mistake. It's a mistake because when it's a revenue mandate versus a revenue focus, a revenue mandate means that this person's not going to make any time for their own personal development, and they're going to plateau. They're going to hit a ceiling in their career because their product, their industry is going to evolve and they won't. You have to be able to take that step back and develop yourself. You also have to be careful not to deflect too much. I think there's, again, a revenue focus versus revenue mandate. Finding ways to deflect questions, whether internally or externally, can be a powerful thing to drive more revenue until it breaks. And eventually, those are the things that burn bridges internally, that can frustrate your customer experience, and that's something that you need to be very careful with. So again, I would just summarize by saying the revenue should be a focus, not a mandate. Business acumen, again, that's another one of those buzzwords that sometimes is described a little bit differently, but I think simplistically put, I want the people that don't just understand our business, I want people selling that understand business. So just because we've come up with a really strong ROI for our product doesn't mean we could have the right use case, but not the right business case. And so, for example, if someone, my team sells CRM, if someone was selling CRM to me and trying to help me grow my business, CRM isn't the only way to do it. Technology could be the answer. Maybe investing, instead of in technology, we should invest in a better product or better marketing or better sales training. We're really good at teaching. It's very easy to teach sales reps to compete against their competitors, but if they don't have business acumen, they're not going to be able to compete against alternatives to hit those same goals. We want people that can walk in. Picture our job, we're hiring people that are usually early in their career, maybe 2 to 5 years of experience on my team. And I'm asking them to walk into a boardroom and tell a CFO or a CEO who's been running their business for 20 years that we might have a way to make it better. And that takes a certain level of conviction, a certain amount of polish and succinct, articulate communication for them to come into that boardroom and hold their own. And the business acumen gives them some of the ammo to hold their own in those conversations. Sales acumen, probably a little bit more self-explanatory. This is a little bit more of the traditional sales cycle. I think when we're looking for sales acumen, we're looking for the people that treat sales where it's not all instinct. There's an art, and we want to know they've got the science as well. And the best way to identify that is, do they treat it like a process? Do they focus on trying to master every step of the process? Because those are the account executives. They're going to be able to repeat their success. So you're going through maybe a resume and asking about their experience, their track record of success, and they say, yeah, I was #1 on my team 3 years in a row. Congratulations, that's great. What were you doing to drive that success? And they try to be humble and they say, right place, the right time, and one step at a time, and every day counts, you got to give it your all. That's not the process that convinces me that they know how to repeat that success. Now, the people that can tell me, well, first I worked on being very good at pipe gen, I got really good at asking the right questions for needs analysis, I had a great mentor who showed me how to articulate a very compelling and succinct business case. Then we start talking about the sales process and sales acumen that makes me say, that's excellent, that's going to be great. And if they don't have it, so be it, because that's a lot easier to teach than something like integrity or curiosity. Building on the sales acumen, I almost initially wanted to put this in the same bucket, but as you get into the bigger deals, bigger complexity of deals, we get into some of what Tim was talking about earlier, and that is they become part sales rep, part project manager, part psychologist on trying to get the emotions of everyone involved. And with that complexity and more moving pieces of the puzzle, the project management, proper documentation, getting all these moving pieces and moving people to work together, a bit of a different skill. And with that, you cannot follow a step-by-step process. At some point, there's going to be some nuance, and we want the people that have the creativity. And that's something that we try and spend a lot of time, is helping them know when to break the process and use their creativity. For product knowledge, does anyone in the room play a musical instrument? Like 5%, tech conference, okay. If you play a musical instrument or if you've ever written a song, I think you'll agree it's really difficult to write a song that you don't know hard to write a song that has chords that you can't play. You won't hear it in your head, the melody won't come to you. It's really difficult to do. And I think the same thing, especially in an organization that sells a lot of separate products, you will absolutely be leaving money on the table if you do not know the products that you can map to the solution that's required. So we spend a lot of time, we have an incredible team of solution engineers, implementation partners. We're surrounded by an army of resources that could help us with this. And despite all that help, we spend a considerable amount of time with our sales reps making sure that they understand the product knowledge as well. Last but not least, forecasting. This is not a way to make your manager think that you're on top of your business. This isn't a matter of managing up. This is all about prioritizing your time. This is all about making proactive decisions to increase your chances of hitting your goals. And here's another one that we see a lot of really bad advice. This is a cultural one for us. It is bad advice to make sure that you always hit your forecast. And my manager is in the audience right now, so I hope that he still agrees. I may or may not have missed my forecast last week. But the reason it's so important is we don't want, thank you for letting me off the hook. The reason it's so important is because we want the forecast to be an actual prediction of where we're going to land. Are we on track for our goals or not? It's not at the very worst case, where do we land? I caught a lot of scrutiny about 3 years ago because I didn't promote our second top performer in all of North America. And the reason I didn't do that was every single month he'd finish 50 to 100% higher than his forecast. And I'd be on customer calls with him, and he sounded great. He had all the answers. He had the intangibles that I don't know how to teach. He had a really good mix of the 7 that you see in front of you now. And it just didn't sit well with me to promote him, because if he's always doubling his forecast, he's either a sandbagger or an undertaker. And those are not good reasons to promote someone. So what we look at is we give them permission to miss a forecast as long as they're missing by the smallest amount possible. Right? We're looking for accuracy, we're looking for consistency, and we're looking for them to manage their business so tightly that it makes it easier for them to have that accuracy and consistency. So those are the 7 that I can teach. I think it's interesting. There's some people in the back that have been on my team for years, and I'm willing to bet that they could have delivered the second half of this deck. We talk the things that we can teach. They could have stood up here without a single dry run or even seeing the slides and say, yes, the 7 summits, here's what we focus on. But I bet that's the first time they've ever seen the ones that we can't teach. Because the point of this is to solve for focus. So if we've hired right, we don't need to have that conversation. We just go straight to focusing on the things that we can teach, the things that we want to help them get better at. Here's the call to action. Everyone has a long list of things that are mandatory for their business to be successful. I'm willing to bet most people's list is too long. I would love to challenge any of you to break that list into 2 categories. What can you teach? What can you not teach? And send me an email, dross@salesforce.com. Twitter, LinkedIn works as well. And let me know how that list is coming along. I think you'll find it really powerful when you can break it into those 2 categories and start using a common language and structure with your team. So we've got 4 minutes for questions. And here's what I'm willing to do. For the first 3 people that break the ice and ask a question, I will give you a copy of the books that Tim and Colleen have already offered for free. We've got some mics available.
So question for you. You said that there was those that you couldn't teach, but can you develop them if you had more time, but maybe not in a professional environment? I'm coming from a university setting, that's why I'm asking.
So that's kind of going back to the debate of maybe it can be taught, I just haven't figured out how.
You don't have the time to develop those characteristics over 2 to 3 years, whereas I may have those. That's my question.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years ago, I don't think I had any of those things that I now consider mandatory to start in my team. It's not that they can be learned over time. I think just at the pace and accountability that our business demands, they are better off to start in a different role and learn it over time. Business acumen is a perfect example. That takes a while. You got a book. Tim and Colleen will see to that.
Hey, yes. Man, good work, D. Listen, my question is this. In the interview, particularly in those you can't teach, how do you assess for curiosity? How do you assess for self-awareness? Like, I would like to see how you do that in those short periods of time.
That answer is not a short period of time thing. That's taken a lot of practice. I'll use curiosity as one example. The easiest one for me is who asks great questions. So, I'm doing some recruiting for my leadership team, and literally last week, someone hopped on the call to do just like an initial get to know you. They want to learn, the agenda that they set was, I want to learn more about the role, I want to learn a little bit more about what you're looking for, and figure out next steps. So this is, even at a manager level, I've never spoken to them before. I know they've done some research. I've heard about this person. I've heard nothing but good things. They're a top performing account executive. But within 5 minutes, he said, well, that's all, Dan. That's all the questions I have. And I tried to give him permission to ask more. I'm like, hey, I'm surprised. We'd like to hire curious people. This is the first time we've talked. Are you sure you've done enough homework and you understand my leadership style enough to be 100% committed and comfortable with this role? And he said, yep, no more questions. So as we move into a more formal interview, I think it's going to be really difficult. My gut says this is a reflection of how they sell, that they move a little too quick to the pitch without understanding what problems they're trying to solve.
Good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got time for one more question.
I see a hand up.
Yep. Yeah, if you could,
Yes,
that'd be
please.
great. Nah, give it a shot.
I'm new to this Salesforce thing. This is my first time. Been working with it now 6 months. I was hired to come in, product, program manage, building a Salesforce instance, a new dealer sales operating model for salespeople to begin their day in Salesforce and to end their day in Salesforce. What's your advice as we implement this new Salesforce instance?
I'm trying to find the best way to summarize. There's a lot of nuance to that. I think before you do anything, you want a really good sense of what the change management strategy will be, what the change in culture will be, what sort of expectations you're setting. Not to oversimplify it, but I think you want some sort of common framework because there's a lot of different questions and expectations that will need to be set as you change the structure and process of the team, and you want everyone working on the same terminology, the same vision. I think spend a lot of time getting buy-in on that before you implement any of the technology. All right, thank you very much.